It is everything described there.
All right, there we go. Let me share the screen and then I can read off as soon as I find where that option is. Share screen, here we go. All right, now I can read off the notes. Thank you, everyone. This is the Cluster API meeting, a subgroup of SIG cluster lifecycle. This meeting is recorded. Remember to raise your hands since this is an element of the cluster lifecycle, SIG cluster lifecycle. Please follow the CNCF community guidelines. Essentially sums up to be nice to each other. Raise your hands when you have questions. And am I missing anything? I'm skimming this really quick. I think that covers everything with those. All right. So let's start off with open proposals. Do we have any open proposals that need to go over for today? Would they be listed here if we did?
We don't have an open proposal currently. You can skip this one and go to welcome new attendees.
Oh, right, sorry.
Yeah.
So if we have any new attendees, let's take a moment. You can either raise your hand or unmute, speak up, and introduce yourself. Dan, you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I'm Dan McQueenie. I work at Adobe with Mike. Sort of just being exposed to Cluster API recently due to some work on Carpenter and realizing that we have to plug it into Cluster API and Kappa and CapZ. So I'm just getting my arms around how all of this works. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for joining. Anyone else?
I can go. My name's Ogden Mills, and I'm on the data collection team for Adobe Analytics. And we do some of our own cluster management in China since Ethos isn't over there. So I'm trying to keep track of what Ethos Core is doing and how stuff is going so we can know how we can leverage it for our China clusters.
All right, going once, going twice. All right, let's go on to discussion topics then. Looks like we have Fabrizio, you're up first.
Thank you, Mike. So first one is about, I'm proposing a small amendment to our backport policy. So the reason why I'm proposing this is that now the project is settling down to a 4-month cadence, which is great for the project overall, but it can sometimes slow down the work on experimental feature. So following something similar that has been, that exists in the CapZ policies, I'm proposing basically to allow to backport small enhancement or addition to experimental feature, but with some guardrails. So guardrail number one is that this should not become an habit, because the recommended way to deploy enhancement or addition to experimental feature is to group them together and into the next minor release. The second guardrail is that we allow this kind of backport only to the latest stable branch. In this moment, it is 1.3. And the second and the last guardrail, and the most important, is that the top priority for the reviewer will be to keep the release branch stable. So reviewer will have to make sure that the backport is well scoped, it is not breaking, and also it does not touch part of the code base which are used by stable feature. and eventually additional guardrail depending on the type of PR. And so it is possible. It is a backdoor in case we forgot to add something or people ask something and we do not want to wait for months, but it should not become the habit. This is the main call out for it. So please take a look at the PR comment. I think that the phrase is important here. So everyone's feedback is welcome.
I don't see the raise hand button for hosts, but I'll throw in my 2 cents that I like this idea. I know we've talked about doing the same with the CAPZ stuff. Experimental features definitely need to move faster than the regular cadence, I think. Cecile?
Yeah, I think I'm also +1 to the idea. I think it's needed for being able to make progress on these features. Although I will say, I think the devil is in the details, and we should be very careful of how we word this, because I think if it's too subjective, it can lead to different interpretations. So, for example, like I see right now it says small enhancements. Like we should define what is small, like what is considered small. And then what does it mean not make it a habit? So is this like, maybe like we can have rules by, for example, it needs to be approved by 2 maintainers in order to grant an exception. So that can be more like by default, it's not authorized, but you can get an exception for it. Otherwise I could see this sliding. And then I think the hardest part will be to make sure we don't touch other parts of the code base, because very often PRs that are targeting mostly experimental files end up fixing like a util function or adding a new util function or changing something in a non-experimental file. So that will be something to watch out for. But I'll comment on the PR. Thank you, Fabrizio, for making this.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's find the right wording and make it possible with some guardrail.
Anyone else have any comments, or we'll move on to the next topic?
Okay, so for the people that were in Detroit, we had during the contributor summit, we had a slot which was dedicated to the cluster API status upgrade, but it was mostly open discussion, and I enjoyed it. Also, I got very, very positive feedback from other folks. So I'm leaning towards proposing on something similar, a copy project upgrade session for the contributor summit in Amsterdam. And so if just raising this here, if there are topics or discussion or anything that people would like to focus in this session, it will help me to write the summary and the body of this proposal. Otherwise, feel free to reach out. This is a space for us, and we can use as the best.
We have comments in chat. +1, but not there. Okay. I don't see any hands up unless I'm looking at this wrong. So perhaps Rizio, posting this in Slack, we'll get some more feedback as well. I think that'd be a good place to get some feedback on it.
Will do, sure, thanks. That's a good suggestion.
All right, let's see what else we got next. Provider updates with Cecile.
Thanks. This is very similar to last week's update, except now the release is actually out. So TabZ 1.8.0 has been released. It contains a lot of great goodies and features, but two main things I want to call out is managed clusters. So AKS is now graduated out of experimental. This means it's no longer behind a feature flag. So huge thanks to everyone who helped make that happen. Second thing is we are now defaulting to out of tree cloud provider for non-managed or self-managed clusters, so not AKS clusters. Those were already out of tree cloud provider, but the self-managed clusters are now using out of tree cloud provider in all the default and reference templates and tests. So make sure you read up on that if that doesn't sound familiar. That's all. Thanks.
Excellent. And then who's this? Richard, you have a feature group update.
Yep, it's for the alternative communication patterns feature group. So we met earlier, just two of us, me and Florian from AWS. We decided that we're probably going to move from a 2 weeks cadence to a monthly cadence, just because progress is slow, in all honesty. So I know from both our parts there isn't the focus yet. This will change because this will become a priority for my work, certainly. But yeah, so we'll be moving to 4 weeks or a month, and we'll update the feature group documentation to reflect this.
Again, I don't know where the hand thing is. I just have a question for us somewhat new people. I've been here for a little while. What is this alternative communication patterns group?
So this is to see if it's possible, well, it is possible, people have done this, to instead of having the assumption where the management cluster has direct connectivity to all child clusters, that something like a reverse tunnel is used. The child cluster or infrastructure connects back to the CAPI management cluster. Then that way you don't have to punch a whole bunch of holes through your firewall. So we're just looking at alternatives that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Fabrizio, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this is a question for Richard. So recently I was looking to KCP, the KCP from Red Hat, so the KCP.dev project. And I saw that they have an interesting solution for solving a similar problem, which is the Syncer, which is basically an agent that runs on the physical cluster. In this case, for CAPI, it will be in the workload cluster. And this agent is responsible to sync data, in this case, resources, back to a central control plane. In the case of KCP, is KCP itself. In the case of CAPI, could be the management cluster. Have you considered something similar and in your discussion?
Not specifically something like the Syncer. I know we did consider, I guess network type stuff, so proxies, tunnels, but we also did have considered sort of like a message passing, so message broker, whatever you want to call it, type of thing, but not specifically the Syncer. Now you've mentioned the Syncer. That's really interesting. Another discussion that came up today, which was, CAPI manager of managers, essentially, which the sync would be really, really interesting for that. But yeah, not as part of this, but maybe we should, and I can add that to the discussion document as well, because we've got a separate doc with some of the alternatives that we have considered. So I will definitely add it to that. That's a good point. Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you that this open up to not only to solve this problem, but probably also other interesting scenario. Just a clarification, I don't know enough about the Syncer to tell if it is the exact solution that we want to implement. I don't know enough about its implementation detail, but I think that the pattern that they are implementing makes sense. So yeah, maybe sometime down the line I will reach out to you and, I don't know, do a deep dive or figure it out if there is something that we can leverage on, or some idea that we can look at.
Yeah, sounds good. Brilliant.
All right, any other items that anybody wanted to bring up that's not on the agenda? Cecile?
Yeah, I put this in chat, but just in case people didn't see it, for the alternative communication patterns group, I've seen multiple people ask what it's about, and I think every other time I forget what it's about. So it might be worth like thinking of like a more like targeted name. I think I really like Daniel's suggestion of the management workload cluster connectivity patterns. So just something to think about.
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was more naming at the time. So yeah, yeah, definitely great idea. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right, anyone else have anything? Richard, is your hand up for something else or just for that?
Just that, sorry.
No, no worries. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And
Thanks, Mike, for hosting.
yeah, and I'll reach out over Slack to figure out where to upload this to.
Thanks, ping me in Slack. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, everyone.